Welcome back to the Wild Ones podcast, the show where we chat about bike stuff. I am Jimmy, and this week I am joined by producer Emily.
Hello.
And Francis CADE.
Hello.
With an evil cat puppy on his lap.
This is my hot water Bella.
Hot
to
water
make me
Bella.
feel better because I'm a bit ill, as you can probably tell from my voice.
I think it sounds okay.
Is it? All the symptoms are in my head. So if we could just remove my head, then I'd be fine.
Off with his head.
And thanks to Garmin for supporting this podcast and helping us to bring you shows like this for free. For the viewers, you will notice we're in a new office. For the listeners, I will tell you, we're in a new office. You might be able to hear a distinct lack of echo this week, perhaps.
Echo,
I definitely can, and I think it sounds delicious.
Delicious.
Yeah, it's very soothing. I've got my headphones on, I can hear it in real time, and it sounds good.
It's kind of a bit weird because there's so little echo in this room that I feel like I can hear my ears hearing.
Yes, I can hear the blood running through my veins.
Can you?
But that might also be the sinus infection.
It could be, yeah. Probably more likely that, to be honest.
Yeah, that's true. I think you've done something quite remarkable with this room, in fact, considering how big it is. We're not going to go into details. You have to watch Studio Tour Part 1 to find out what Jimmy has done. Because I think it's pretty cool. Oh, Bella.
Oh, she's leaving.
Oh, she's gone.
Okay.
I'm so cold now.
For absolute clarity, I guess I should probably put this in. I've spent about a month building this space, soundproofing one of the walls, sound treating everything else so it sounds like, well...
A proper recording studio.
Well, yeah, I guess, yeah. Or video studio, I guess, is probably more appropriate.
Yeah, it is very remarkable, I agree. It's a fantastic feat of building work. It also looks like I'm in a different room, but I'm not. I'm just in a different section.
No, you are. You're in the producer's booth.
Yeah, that's what we can say it is, yeah.
The isolation booth. It's kind of weird, isn't it? That, like
a sauna.
Yeah.
Why are you in a sauna?
It does kind of feel weird, doesn't it? It's like I can... You know when you talk with headphones on, you can hear it through the headphones. It feels a bit alien.
Mm.
It's actually like that, but without headphones on.
Well, it probably sounds exactly the same to everybody else at home.
It definitely does with these mics. However, in the normal videos that we make, hopefully it's going to make a significant improvement.
Correct. How are you guys? What you guys been up to?
We had a little pre-Tour de France and Tour de Femme holiday.
We did.
To try and get a few days of not thinking about work, and it was lovely. We went to Berlin.
Oh.
Yeah.
Do you go to Berghain? You know, they're like the nightclub that they're very selective about who gets in. Well, I have a theory, which is a weird cyclist wearing a pair of bib shorts and a base layer, like a string vest base layer, would actually be, it's the perfect outfit and vibes. Just, cue with confidence, and you would actually get in.
Yeah, I mean...
It worked.
Oh, you did go in, but
Yeah,
you
it
can't
worked.
talk about it.
We're not allowed to. It was the rules. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, the thing that stood out to me most about our trip was what a cycling utopia it is for a city. And I always thought this about Amsterdam as well and, the Netherlands, but I hadn't appreciated that it's actually just continental Europe, anywhere but here. The infrastructure is great. It keeps you away from cars. It keeps you safe. There's clearly a hierarchy in that cars were looking for you and you can just go. We were almost like, we were stopping the flow because we were so nervous about it, and cars are just like, are you going or what? And they're just stopping and waiting for you. Wild.
So good, isn't it?
Yeah,
it's
fantastic.
Like properly an incredible place to ride a bike. And I didn't actually think they existed. The infrastructure is probably fairly comparable to the infrastructure we have here. So it isn't just an infrastructure thing, but like the relationship of humans with what is going on the roads is just in a different league. It's wonderful.
Yeah, and I also don't think there are cyclists and then other people. It's just everyone has a bike. Everyone rides a bike. There was kids on bikes going to and from school.
And just like swinging around in the streets on bikes, and it's safe for a toddler on a balance bike to be using the roads.
Yeah.
As it should be.
Yeah. Can you imagine
Yeah.
that in this country?
Yeah.
Just absolutely wild. It's
But
so good.
The culture's changed since I was a kid. I used to play on my bike in the road when I was a kid. And that is not doable now. I think people would get arsey about it.
Yeah.
It's changed.
Oh, one more observation though. Everyone is riding steel bikes with rim brakes, of course. So is there a case for our rim brakes going to disappear? Well, in that respect, no, because they can't, because there is millions and millions of bikes in continental Europe that are still steel and are still rim brakes, and they need servicing.
They need servicing.
Well, yeah, as in like brands can't stop making rim brake products.
Oh, actually.
Yeah, meanwhile, as we were away, I read a story about a new roundabout they're trying to introduce. I don't know, Milton Keynes, somewhere like that. They love roundabouts. And it's a new type that it prioritizes bicycles more. And the press of this country, more the right-wing press, are calling them woke roundabouts.
They're a bunch of kids, them people, aren't
Yeah,
they?
this is it. So that's what we're up against in this country. But never mind. Shall we see what's been going on in the news?
Yes, please.
So first up, the UCI has been getting a lot of hate this week, more than usual, I would say. And if you've already seen this story, you will probably have guessed that we'd have plenty to say about it. So they've just introduced a new rule which limits handlebar width to a minimum of 40 centimetres outside to outside and 32 centimetres hood to hood. And that's for road and cyclocross riders. Why? Well, it's seen as a response to the growing trend of uber narrow bars and aggressively turned in hoods in the pursuit of getting more aero. And now the UCI says it's unsafe and that very narrow bars can lead to a loss of control. So why is the new rule so controversial? Well, the argument is that it doesn't take rider size into account, and so it disproportionately affects smaller people who benefit from narrow bars, particularly women. In fact, according to Bike Radar, Cervelo reported that their women's Visma Lisa bike team, 14 of the 18 riders will have to change their handlebars to now comply with the new rules.
That is bonkers, isn't it?
It is, yeah. It shows just how disproportionately it's affecting those teams. I wouldn't say that Visma Lisa bike is an anomaly in that sense either, from what I'm hearing. And riders won't be able to get around this by having super flared bars either.
We should probably explain what using handlebars that are larger than your shoulder width actually does. Francis is essentially our resident bike fitter based on how many videos he's made with Bike Fit James. So can you summarise it for us, please?
The best in the room. That's all we've got.
If you look to your notes section, I've already done some research on this and you just have to read it out.
Lovely. Of course, there's exceptions. There always is. But it's generally accepted in bike fitting that bars should be about the width of your shoulders. Any wider, and then the rider starts to compensate, rolling your wrists, putting your hands, because it essentially increases the reach of your bike, like further back on the bars, inability to reach the brake levers, so it becomes a bit of a safety issue sometimes. It all depends on bar flare as well. Like, I'm sure UCI have some silly rules on flare, but for the average person, if you have wide bars with flare, that can change things again. So like, it's not a hard and fast rule, but generally about the width of your shoulders is what's recommended by most bike fitters.
Yeah, stuff like numb hands, neck and shoulder tension, just generally not being as comfortable.
It goes down the chain, doesn't it? So it can you can have a wide bar and then suddenly end up with a weird pain in your lower back, and it's like, well, what's going on here?
Yeah, and if you're thinking about, I mean, we should make this clear that this is a racing rule. So if you're not racing, it doesn't apply to you. But if you're thinking about in the context of racing where marginal differences do make a difference, if your competitor happens to have 40 centimetre shoulder width and 40 centimetre bars, they're going to potentially be a lot more comfortable and be making less compromises than someone who's a smaller rider.
But one of the reasons it just seems like an absurd ruling to me is if I'm 6'3", I can run a 40 centimetre bar with my shifters at 32 as per the ruling, and I'm going to be in a relatively aero position. It's going to force me into this tighter position that everyone wants. If I'm my height and I do it, then I'm going to be a barge comparatively. So the rule surely has to be based like a scale based on how tall you are, rather than just saying everyone has to have this as a minimum.
They kind of do this already with some elements of bike fit, like a morphological exception. So extremely tall and extremely small riders won't have to abide by some of the bike fitting rules, like your tip of the saddle being 5 centimeters away from your bottom bracket in a straight line, things like that. So I know they can do it. It's just odd that they've chosen one hard and fast rule for like every rider, every size of rider.
Well, I would hope that based on this not coming into effect until next year, that they have the opportunity to correct it.
I'm surprised it hasn't been corrected, considering this happened at the end of last week and it's now Tuesday.
Well,
or Thursday if you're listening to this.
Yeah, maybe by the time it goes out, it will have been corrected.
I hope so.
I genuinely can see there being a U-turn on this. There's been so much backlash. So loads of people in the industry have spoken out. Dan Bigham, who works for Red Bull Bora, he's the Aero man, isn't he? He said he acknowledges that it disadvantages below average riders. Eurosport's presenter Orla Chenoui, she said, "We really need to stop pretending that we support women in sport when rules and equipment are only ever based on men and actively discriminate against women." Here. BikeFit James, friend of the channel, BikeFit James, called it a blatant disregard for almost all female cyclists because in his experience, over 80% will require a narrower bar than a 38 centimetre. He said the potential long-term ramifications for opening up the sport to women and smaller riders could potentially be huge, and he agrees with you that there should be allowances based on rider size, like there are for saddle setback. Bike fitted Tim Allen from Soigneur, he said, "I cannot recall a time when a single female rider optimally suited a bar this wide in 11 years of fitting bikes." Now, I know there's been some debate over whether the rules mean 40 centimetre bars centre to centre or if it actually means a 38 centimetre bar. And I think it kind of depends on what equipment you're using. So Tim pointed out that if, for example, you are running Shimano levers, because of the shape of them, you'd have to run a non-flared 40 centimetre bar in order to meet the 32 hood to hood restriction. So it's a bit complex. And the UCI diagram that try to point out how to do the measurement also.
The shifters are in the wrong orientation. They're not how Shimano would recommend setting them up. They're sticking out too far.
They're sticking out to meet that 32 hood to hood, whereas really they should be further in.
This is just how insane the new UCI regulations regarding handlebar width are. This is a 38 centimeter handlebar measuring 38 centimeters center to center at the drops, also 38 centimeter center to center at the hood. So a straight through drop from the hood clamps through to the drops. So they measure 40 centimeters outside to outside, which is within the UCI regulations. And these are the Shimano 12-speed Di2 shifters, by far the most common shifter shape used in pro cycling and certainly amateur racing as well. And I set these up into their ergonomic and attachment correct position. And there's a good reference for that is that the back of the lever cover sits straight across the bar, and they are designed to turn in very slightly, as this is a better position for the wrists to sit into rather than being kind of cocked outwards like with what happens with a straight lever. Actually allows your wrists to turn over following the rotation of your shoulder and natural rotation of your elbow, which ultimately helps you relax into the handlebar. Between the levers, they measure 30 centimeters, 2 centimeters under the new regulations specified by the UCI. I mean, what the f*** did they even do their maths?
UCI are not bike fitters. They're not experts in this. Like they shouldn't be.
But they have
like, pay for some consultancy.
this decision apparently came off the back of discussions with SAFER, and SAFER is almost like a cross-party group. It's different stakeholders, so like race organisers, teams, riders, the UCI themselves, all kind of have contributors that talk through this. So in theory, that should give you a sort of cross populace, but I just don't see how that's become effective when clearly it feels like something major has been overlooked.
I would love to see the minutes from those meetings, because surely there's been objections there and they've just pushed it through.
Yeah, I did read in Bike Radar, they had what they described as a source very close to the consultation was ultimately kicking off and saying it was ridiculous, and that that's where this quote about Visma bike and how many riders would have to change.
Yeah.
So I think there has been some dispute. That's what I'm reading into it, that there actually has been some dispute within this consultation as well. We're making the point about it disproportionately affecting women. I saw something online that was basically saying there's studies online that show the average women's shoulder width is 33 centimetres.
There you go.
So there we go. After my bike fit, I've had it and I am now on a 34 centimetre bar, which I think actually would still not be UCI legal even before these rules, because I think they were 35 minimum before. But it shows you that ultimately little people need littler stuff.
And what would the measurement in between the inner hoods?
Oh, don't know.
Jimmy went and measured every single bike we have at CADE Media upstairs.
I think this is actually the biggest problem of these changes, is the inside shifter to shifter measurement. So, but having measured some of the bikes that we've got, most of them have typically 38 to 40 centimetre, maybe 42 bars from just ones that we've got on entry-level bikes or have just been lying around, whatever. There's two that stand out, and it's Benny's Look, his own personal bike. Well, actually, I think it's his wife's bike that he's using at the minute, and my Howler. And both of them have 38 centimetre bars on, which measure 40 centimetres outside, so that's legit. Neither of us have our shifters pushed in that much, but they are both slightly turned in. But it's not, you wouldn't look at it and go, that's ridiculous. You would go, oh, they've pushed them in a bit.
They're probably correctly set up.
Benny's measures 27 centimetres and mine measures 28 centimetres inside the shifters.
So way off. You'd be having to run a 42.
Isn't that like wild?
And this is not in the pursuit of Aero.
No. It's just it just all sits nice and is comfortable and is ergonomic. That's not trying to make an aggressive position. It's just a nice shifter position. Isn't that wild? That's such a huge difference. I'm sure if I put them at 32, especially on my Howler, it's going to be like slightly
They'll be pointing out.
Yeah.
Like the other picture that Tim posted.
Yeah.
It looks ridiculous.
It just seems badly thought through. I saw that the International Bike Fitters Institute, the IBFI, has now been in contact with the UCI as well and asked them to rethink the rule.
The people they should be paying for consultancy.
Well, yeah, this is it, isn't it? And I get what they're trying to do, and I kind of support what they're trying to do. They're trying to limit in a lot of their rules, they try to do that. They know that races are getting faster. There's a lot of money going into aerodynamic advantage, and they're trying to limit that and increase safety, but it's just...
Well, there's definitely a big trend for like insanely narrow stuff. Like I've seen, there was an ex-professional track cyclist who has her own personal bike set up with bars that are nearly the sort of bars she would race on track, and I think they're like 24 centimeter handlebars. Like you can't handle that bike. That bike will not handle very well. And that isn't that this person needs 24 centimeter bars. It's a preference. And that's absolutely fine if you're not racing. So there are very extreme scenarios where people are doing things to essentially get a time trial position on a road bike. And I think essentially that's what they're trying to manage. But come on, guys, think about what you're doing first. Use some intelligence.
This is it. Honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if by the time this goes out, they've
Surely.
U-turned.
The reason that isn't going to happen is they are a humongous organisation and barges do not turn quickly. It will be a couple of months down the line, and then there'll be some change once it's kind of all quieted down.
Nothing kicks in until January the 1st anyway. Yeah. So no one has to change their positions. We have until then.
See what happens.
See what happens.
Yeah, I feel like there's been two trains of thought from what I've gathered from looking at opinion on the internet. One is outrage because of how it disproportionately affects some riders. And the other is, why does it matter? You don't even race. And true, I agree. And it's why, anyone listening to this who doesn't race, don't worry about it. It doesn't affect you. But also, you have to call out when the governing body of the sport internationally is so disproportionately disadvantaging smaller riders and in particularly women. At the highest level, that sends such a bad message and that affects everyone. It does.
Yep.
And also, if you want to think more about yourself, there will be a trickle-down effect.
There's always a trickle-down effect. I was actually, as much as I personally have no interest in all of the very aggressive Aero, nearly TT positions that everyone's going for, what I love about it, and I'm sure we talked about it previously, is that we are seeing much narrower, smaller products coming through. We're seeing smaller cranks become more available. It's still hard to get cranks under 165, but it's easier than it was even a couple of years ago. It used to be impossible to get a handlebar under, in most cases, 40. Then 38's got a bit more popular. Now you can get some 36s, and if you know where to look, you can get 34s. You can get 34s. You can get 32s. So the trickle down of people being obsessed with Aero is actually more accessible products at better price points that allow more people to ride bikes. So the disadvantage of this is potentially then that's going to slow that down from a normal person perspective. So not even a bike racer perspective, just Emily wants a bike that actually fits her. What products are available? There's going to be potentially less products available in the future.
It's true. I would urge anyone who thinks they have a narrow handlebar position to go and measure it and see how ridiculous the UCI numbers are.
Yeah, for sure.
Because it is just so badly thought through.
Well, before we move on from this story, there were actually a couple of other UCI rules being introduced as well.
Oh, lovely.
They're banning front forks larger than 11.5 centimetres internal width. So maybe that Factor prototype bike that we saw at the Dauphiné might be banned before it's even launched. Unclear at this stage, but could be.
I guess the interesting thing with that is that bike has to be signed off by the UCI for it to be able to be raced.
Ah, okay.
So there was potentially a point where different organisations in the UCI were going, yes, approved, no, not approved from next year.
Or they give them a little heads up and it's actually only 11.4 centimetres.
Yeah, interesting to see.
Surely they'd tell them it's a lot of money's worth of
Yeah, but they might not know.
molds.
It might be separate people in the organisation.
Maybe they have a backup smaller fork ready.
TBC on that one. They're also planning to introduce a distinction between helmet standards for different events. And the reason I included this is because last week, Francis, you were asking about why there's TT-looking helmets in road races. Well, that might soon change. We don't have... They've just said they're going to do something about it. They haven't told us what yet, so watch this space.
Good, they're allowed to do that. I love the UCI.
It is interesting, the UCI, isn't it? Because it does seem like a lot of their decisions are about aesthetic, not about safety.
Historically,
or performance.
it always has been. It's maintaining the image of the sport, isn't it? That's why they didn't like Aubrey.
Yes, yeah. And they also hate triathletes.
Probably.
Because they have a free-for-all.
Yep.
He wanted to say something about triathletes, didn't he? He was holding back thinking, maybe I am the UCI.
But then you spend some time at Ironman World Champs, and then you go, maybe the UCI does have a point.
Please put that in.
Yeah, you can. Meanwhile, the enhanced games are back in the news. Do you remember them?
Yes.
It's the tournament that's been branded the Pro Doping Olympics, where competing athletes will be allowed to use performance-enhancing drugs. In fact, they're incentivizing them to dope. Because if they break a world record, they get $1 million. It's like a Mr. Beast video, isn't it?
It is, isn't it?
Is this Mr. Beast's next thing? He's going to buy it. The whole thing this week has been officially condemned by the actual Olympics and WADA, the World Anti-Doping Agency. They've called the games irresponsible, immoral, and warned they could lead to deaths as well as long-term health consequences. But the founder of the games, Australian businessman Aaron D'Souza, has already brushed off safety concerns like these. It's like Jurassic Park, isn't it? Just has a passion for this. Let's just keep going, no matter what happens.
But this seems to be the case with like super rich, very capitalist extreme people, like your Elon Musks of the world. And we recently watched the documentary on Netflix about Titan.
Oh yeah, have you seen that one?
Oh yes.
The submersible that went down to the Titanic.
Well, he idolized Bezos and Musk, didn't he? He's like, my kind of guys.
And having watched it, I won't give too many spoilers. So the submersible is made from carbon fiber. So in our world, we know about carbon fiber.
Yeah, it wouldn't have happened to us.
It wouldn't have, because we would have made it out of steel, because that's a better material than carbon fiber. But that's a whole nother conversation.
Yeah. Didn't you watch it?
Yeah, steel and titanium is what they do.
Yeah.
And I've lost my point now, Francis.
The guy. Hubris.
He is just a very good example of someone which knew it was a flawed product, but just drove on and drove on and drove on.
You know the popping noise that Titan made as it was like breaking slowly? I've heard that noise from carbon before, where I was at a petrol station in Mauritius trying to put air in my tire with like the thing that they, the inflator that they have at a petrol station, which is definitely not what you should use on a bike. Put air in my wheel, and then it started going, and it was the noises from Titan, and then it proceeded to explode in my face.
Did it actually explode in your face?
Yeah.
I've blown up a tire on a bike in a petrol station.
It's horrible, isn't it?
But I was like about 4 years old.
Oh,
I wouldn't have been 4. I was probably like 7.
Yeah.
And it was like a kid's bike, like proper tiny little wheel.
And
I was like, la 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 la. Just when they were free on the side, just popped it up and it just blew up in my face. And I remember the terror. So the moral of this story is,
it's quite horrible, isn't it?
don't make a submersible out of carbon fiber, and don't fill up your bike tires with a car pump thing.
Same magnitude of consequences.
We've digressed.
Yeah, tell us more about Australian businessman Aaron D'Souza.
Well, he previously branded the safety concerns as hysteria and said it's a classic misconception that performance-enhancing drugs are unsafe.
Oh, okay. Well, sounds fine then.
He insists that athletes will undergo medical screenings to monitor their health and make sure they're okay to compete. His inaugural tournament takes place next May in Vegas. Of course, it's in Vegas. It'll include 3 sports: sprinting, swimming, and weightlifting, with cycling set to follow in year 3.
Whoa.
I didn't upset any Vegas dwellers. It's a great place.
Yeah.
Sometimes.
Sprinting, swimming, and weightlifting. That's a good starting point, to be fair. So I do not condone this, but I probably will watch it.
Will you?
It is.
It's like the car crash you can't look away from.
Kind of. It's a really interesting exploration of what's possible versus, and the bit I'm fascinated in is, what does a officially clean athlete, the existing world records, how do they stand against people that can do anything? I categorically don't support it, and I categorically won't pay to watch it because I don't support it.
It will be pay-per-view, though.
Yeah, but there'll be something.
You're going to do it on the dodgy stick?
Well, there'll be something on the internet somewhere or other, and you'll get highlights of
The dodgy stick.
Do you know
Is
what?
that like a thing you stick? I've heard about these.
I actually don't have one either, promise. But my nail lady always talks about the dodgy stick.
Nail lady.
My nail lady talks about the
in
dodgy
a money laundering business.
No, very reputable business. But yeah, I think it's like you plug it in and it has different shows from lots of different streaming services. I don't really know, but it's called the dodgy stick. I've heard on the street.
So what do we think about cycling being added to this? Are we going to see names that we know entering it? Oh, Lawrence should go on it. Your mate Lawrence.
That'd be
Friend
funny,
of the channel.
wouldn't it?
He's a really good bike racer.
Yeah.
So think how good he would be if he did some stuff.
That's what they were missing with the... Do you ever watch Icarus?
Yes.
Where the guy, Brian Fogel, I think he's like a journalist, but he was into his cycling and he decided to dope himself and see how much better he got. But the thing, he was like kind of a good amateur cyclist, and the event he was doing was Haute Route. So it wasn't really a top level race, and he was starting from a slightly lower. I think taking someone like Lawrence, who's already like 6 watts per kilo, and then
Dope
putting him on. I mean, this is what this is. Yeah.
But maybe we'd actually learn that Lawrence is already doped up.
Well, maybe we're going to learn that all of these athletes are. We'll have to find out, won't
Yeah.
we? What if the swimming times are just like, oh, it's the same?
Well, speaking of the swimming, Ron, right? Have you seen online?
The picture.
There's a before and after picture of a swimmer who's competing called James Magnuson. I literally triple checked this to check that this photo is real because it is insane, okay? I'm going to flash it up on screen, and if you're listening, to describe this man's after physique, his neck is now larger than his head. He's clearly, I would say it's some sort of steroid. He is huge. He is hench. Whatever the muscle is that sits underneath your arms. The lats are very big. The
Traps
are massive. The pecs are very large and the arms are big, especially. I mean, he was a muscly guy before, but a lot more lean and is insane. Is he going to be as aquadynamic? I guess you're just benefiting from the power.
It depends. It all comes down to discipline, doesn't it? If it's a sprint swim, it's all about power. So I imagine a lot of the swimming and it says sprinting, doesn't it, for running? I would hazard a guess the swimming events are going to be 100 meters, 200 meters, things like that.
Yeah, and perhaps the cycling it'll be more track stuff as well. So it's power.
It is. It's good. Yes, it definitely will be track.
It's also a more interesting. It's an easier sport, I think, to watch, and for people outside of
that
cycling.
means that they're actually probably going to prioritize things where you benefit from stuff like muscle mass, which is a very, very well documented method of doping, rather than endurance things where you've got your blood doping and your stuff like that, where it gets, very, very, very high chances of dangerous stuff happening.
Less long-term study, perhaps.
On which?
Because, with bodybuilding and strength-based sports, there has been a lot of cheating in the past, and a lot of people do it recreationally, like the gym we have near us.
Yeah.
It's a done thing. So people I imagine scientists have more of an understanding of the long-term effects of steroid use.
And it's well documented.
And it's well documented, whereas EPO use is like, who's doing that just normally? No one. It's always professional athletes, so it's such a small sample, and most people don't talk about it.
However, I would like to caveat that
we don't support any of this.
No, taking steroids, there are still lots of side effects, and it can still be incredibly dangerous.
Of course, yeah, absolutely.
Or not, according to this guy.
I think that all of the stuff in this, what do they call it again?
Enhanced
games is going to be power events where people are using steroids to get tons of muscle.
You were saying before, it's like a bodybuilding competition, isn't it? In that they actually have clean categories and they have...
Yeah, I think unofficially, in the world of bodybuilding, they have natural bodybuilding and then bodybuilding. So I guess this is, at least they're being more open about it. Although a lot of bodybuilders nowadays are very open about their drug use as well. Like, they don't try and hide it. Everyone knows, even though it's not labeled drugs, not drugs, everyone knows it is.
Yeah, it's wild. I think whether you like it or not, it's going to continue to make the news, and when it's on, I think that there's going to be a lot of coverage. I think there's going to be a lot of clips going around because it is just so sensational, isn't it?
I saw a reel the other day, which is kind of not on this topic, and I'm going to go with it.
Go for it.
And it was about vegetables. Mm-hmm. And it's this idea of where we're saying doping, not doping, and the language around it. And it was saying they should change the language used with how vegetables are labeled. So instead of it being a vegetable and an organic vegetable, it's a vegetable and a chemical vegetable. And then that would encourage you to eat organic rather than pesticide.
Oh, so the enhanced games have got it right.
Yeah.
Non-enhanced and enhanced.
Yeah.
Bodybuilding should be drug bodybuilding and bodybuilding.
Yeah.
Okay, well, in other news, we talked a little bit recently about how brands roll out the red carpet when it comes to showing off their high-end bikes, and how more affordable options don't tend to have big marketing and press budgets put behind them, which makes it harder for people like us to see them, to ride them, and then to eventually talk about them. Well, maybe Decathlon has been listening to that feedback, because I noticed this week they held a press conference in Vermont, USA. No, not press conference, a press trip in Vermont, USA, and invited journalists to ride a $1,400 Alu Van Rysel gravel bike. So a £1,000 bike, which is actually pretty unheard of, isn't it, for a bike of that price? Still not the cheapest, but very much more affordable than what you would usually typically find as the star of a press trip.
Yeah, for sure. That's class.
Yeah, and it stood out to Cycling Weekly too. In fact, the journalist who went, she said she couldn't remember the last time she rode a bike costing less than $2,000. She acknowledged that made her incredibly out of touch, and that it was refreshing, basically, to be invited on a trip for a bike that actually is targeted towards a lot more consumers. Now, I believe this was part of Van Ryssel's launch into the US. So they're launching in the US, not with Decathlon. I don't think there's going to be Decathlon stores, but I saw the name REI. Is that a bike shop or something?
Yes. Yeah, they'll be selling Van Ryssel.
They'll be selling Van Ryssel. They may be somewhere else as well.
Well, there are Decathlons in the States.
Are there?
But they're not going to have national scale.
Maybe
though.
they don't. Yeah, they're just not many of them.
So I guess the reason that they're maybe highlighting this bike as the point of entry is because they're trying to highlight their affordability, which is very much what Decathlon is known for in this country and what they have, I guess, a good reputation for. Same on continental Europe as well. Mm-hmm. I guess I should mention as well, we have done paid work for Decathlon in the past. This section is not paid for. We haven't been asked to mention it. I just generally thought it was interesting, I guess, based on the conversations that we have been having recently on the pod.
Yeah, it definitely. In some spaces, it feels like there is some positive change happening and brands are starting to care more about their product range rather than just care about the big carrot at the top, the £15,000 carrot.
Yeah, or maybe it's just that maybe it's a marketing stunt that if everyone's doing something this way, it's good advertising to just be different. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
There are no Decathlons in the USA, I just checked.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah. One of my friends at USA guy was sponsored by Decathlon, so I guess they were just counting on him having an audience outside of the US.
Yeah.
We are currently reviewing a embargoed bike, and I think it's better value than this.
Do you?
So I don't feel sad about missing out on the event in Vermont. Or very close, at least. It's really such good value.
Gravel bike as well, or can you not say?
I cannot say.
Oh.
That's what embargoed means. In fact, we shouldn't even say it's a bike.
Shouldn't even say it's good value.
Or that it exists and we have it.
Yeah, it doesn't exist.
Okay.
We're never getting another bike again, are we?
Lastly, let's finish up with a quick roundup of some news from the world of pro cycling. Jacyo Alula rider Michael Matthews has put his career on pause after showing signs of pulmonary embolism. That's essentially when a blood clot blocks a blood vessel in the lungs, and symptoms can include chest pain and sudden difficulty breathing. It was apparently discovered during a recent training camp, and unfortunately, that rules him out of this year's tour, but hopefully he's well again soon. Meanwhile, 24-year-old British pro Mason Hollyman, who previously rode for Premier Tech, has had to end his career after struggling with severe allergies. He said it became an impossible task to manage his symptoms, which got worse after he got COVID in 2023. In fact, doctors told him his inflammation levels were so bad that most patients like that couldn't even get out of bed for work in the morning.
Oh, that's bad, isn't it? It seems such a shame for him. It must be very difficult to come to terms with something like that, knowing it's so outside of your control.
Horrible. And I'm assuming allergies, it's like pollen and air and that kind of thing.
Not sure. He put up a YouTube video where he talked about it and he didn't go into details.
Yeah,
maybe that's intentional. Maybe he just wants to keep that private, or maybe it's a combination of things. I used to go to uni with a lass who had allergy complications, and actually she couldn't figure out what it was for a long time as well. So it can sometimes just be a combination of things which bring you up in rashes and stuff, but it's all just histamine response and inflammatory response. So it just makes doing things incredibly difficult.
His YouTube video was actually really good about it. He speaks really well about it. Finally, former pro Molly Weaver has this week set off on a lap around the UK, hoping to break the current world record. She's aiming to ride 7,730 kilometres, 4,800 miles in under 22 days and raising cash for the RNLI in the process. Check out our Instagram at MollyWeaver94 and comment a nice message and say hello. You can see updates on our ride there too. She's got a live tracker on her website, which is ontheedge.cc.
Molly is an absolute legend, isn't she?
She is.
That is a brute of a ride.
70,000 metres of climbing in total. I'm actually having a look on her Instagram now. Day 2, total distance covered, 750 kilometres. In a day. Oh.
Wait. I need to go back a moment. say it's 70,000 meters of elevation.
Yes, in total, which is...
On the coast, which is flat. It's crazy.
70,000.
That is
What are you trying to work out?
in feet.
Oh, right.
That seems wrong.
Feet is
229,000 feet. Wait, is this right?
you double checking it because it seems that outrageous.
Yeah, I am.
Well, it's 1 for 1, isn't it? 70,000 meters over 7,700 kilometers.
Wait, so how many meters is that per day? Can you do 70,000 divided by 22?
3,181 meters a day.
That can't be right, can it?
Is this right?
That's wild.
Yeah, okay, this is from her website. On the Edge route is a little over 7,730 kilometres in length, with over 70,000 metres of elevation gained, the equivalent of 8 ascents of Mount Everest.
Yeah, that's mad, that, isn't it?
That is legitimately like one of the most legendary rides ever.
Yeah, she's great. She is another guest that I would love to have on the podcast, so maybe once she's back.
We did a fantastic video together many years ago where she talked about her eating disorders and eating disorders in pro cycling, in the team she was in, and how diet was treated and all of that stuff. It was really, really good.
Some of the riders that were bigger were performing great, and still they'd be like, yeah, but she needs to lose a bit of weight. And I'd be like, why? She's winning races. But you'd be in like the car with the director, and they'd be going like, oh, you know, so-and-so is looking a bit like a little bit fat, and you're thinking, she just won.
I remember that, and I think that she also wrote a piece for, I can't remember which publication it was, Ruler, something like that, on that same topic, and I thought it was extremely interesting.
Yeah. She's doing this challenge with very little, she struggled to find support because it's 22 days.
Yep.
They're doing like a tag team kind of thing. So she'll have like support crew for 4 days, and then they switch, and then it's a different people for 4 days. It's like intense. Even hard. I know like what she's doing is insane, but the support crew, the logistics there is hard in itself, isn't it? All of it. It's just so many different things going on.
Probably harder.
I would say harder, yeah. All those trips to Greg's, and you have to keep scanning that thing to get the points and the free coffees.
Yeah, the barcodes.
Your arm will get tired.
Yeah.
She will be coming past the northeast at some point, so maybe if it lines up, we can jump in. Although I
Pull her off of a route to have a live podcast.
no, I don't mean that, Jimmy. No, just give us some support.
Here's a lav mic. Surprise.
So tell us about your life.
Please go away. Tell us about your life. Oh, you've dropped me.
That is the reality.
That is
to be
what would
honest.
happen. Yeah.
Today's episode of the Wild Ones podcast is supported by Garmin.
I've actually been using Garmin bike computers and watches for well over a decade now.
Yeah, me too.
I actually bought my first one in 2012. It was the Forerunner 410, and I was training for my very first triathlon at the time.
And how did that go, Jimmy?
Well, it would have gone great if I hadn't accidentally miscounted my bike laps and got myself DQ'd for doing one short.
Rookie error. You should have used the laps function.
I know. But my point is, Garmin's have been part of our lives for a long time now. So it was a bit of a full circle moment when they came on board to support the channel.
And they don't just make watches and head units with bike-specific GPS mapping and performance monitoring.
Nope. They also make power meters, heart rate monitors, smart bike lights that capture video and alert you when cars are approaching, tax indoor trainers, and so much more.
So thank you to Garmin for supporting this podcast.
Fluff up of the week.
Which one are we doing?
Number 1. Benny made us all ill.
Oh.
Actually, you haven't been that ill.
No, it was actually a week ago today, wasn't it? He came out of his little box that we put him in when we do the podcast so that he doesn't make noise. He came out and went, I think I'm sick. And we immediately said, go home
Get
right
out.
now. I'd been in the car with him all morning.
Yeah. And you live with him currently as well.
Yes, and he lives in my house. So I'm now ill.
He was ill. His wife is ill. You were ill. We ran off to Berlin to get as far away from you as possible.
I went to London.
Yeah.
Made my mum ill.
Great.
Yeah.
Spread those diseases. And what's the second fluff up?
So yeah, we did. The office move has actually completed, isn't it? We all of our stuff is now here, and as part of that, we got a big fat Luton van, which is a Mahusive van, and we did multiple runs, and one of them was basically a bike run. And there was 2 bikes that I was very especially looking after, one of which is my Howler, my own personal bike, which ended up at the studio. I can't remember why, but it did. And also the Has this? Yeah, so I can say it because it's gone out once this has gone out. The Massacam bike with the new SRAM group set on it.
Oh, yes.
And they were the two that I was especially looking after, and I was wheeling them both out, and I have to go down a couple of stairs, and I managed to trip and absolutely batter them both.
The lovely new carbon brake levers.
Yeah, so the Massacam, the bike itself is all right. My howler I haven't looked at yet, I'm too scared to. And the brand new SRAM shifter has been absolutely obliterated.
No, I think it has some light scratches. But it always looks worse until you then
They're pretty deep.
wet it and...
They're pretty deep. I'm going to, at some point, have to
It's a gravel group set.
tell SRAM that we damaged their group set
Well, you just have.
and hope that they aren't planning on sending it somewhere else where it needs to be nice and neat and pretty.
Be a demo one, surely.
I would hope so.
Otherwise, you break it, you bought it. That's how it works.
No.
In my experience, bike brands have been very understanding when shifters have got scratched. I didn't destroy, but you know the invisible bike stands, which are really bad
Yes.
because you put a bike on and then a tiny gust of wind goes and then your bike goes goosh and smashes on the floor. That happened to one of the Scots. And I Sharpied it out. Well, I told them about it and then Sharpied it to make it look not as bad.
For the record, we generally are very... we obviously appreciate that brands send us stuff, and we always do our best to look after it and send stuff back clean and looked after. So it was a little bit upsetting. I also have a very juicy bruise on my shin as a result of it as well. So sorry, SRAM.
But sometimes these things do happen.
Oh, well. Time for some unpopular opinions. We'll read out some cycling hot takes, debate them, and then decide if we agree or disagree. Over to you, Francis.
Why have I got all the reading when I've got a sinus infection?
Yeah, sorry. Jimmy specifically said I don't want any reading today because he's tired from doing all of this wonderful work on our new studio.
Matteo says, my unpopular and unrequested opinion is that GRX 610 2x is the best group set for the people who don't race but enjoy riding. 4731 on the front and up to 36 in the cassette, you can go quite fast. You can go steep. You can bike pack. The rubber on the levers is very comfortable. It weighs about the same as 105, maybe even less. I think it's the best choice for an all-round bike. Is that unpopular? I think it's kind of sensible. I like a gravel group set. This is gravel group sets becoming things is amazing because gravel bikes are now coming with like bigger and bigger ratios, and a lot of that is appropriate for the road, to be honest. And GRX levers are
The best.
the best shape. Oh, maybe... You know, I like the SRAM ones as well, but the GRX one's very close.
They're the best. It's interesting, isn't it? Because, you know, even a couple of years ago, we were making videos on first looks on bikes, and we were nearly always saying bikes don't come with enough gears. Like, there isn't a scenario where you go, I wish I had a harder gear on this really fast descent. There are lots of situations where you go, oh, I would like this to be easier because this climb is absolutely killing me. So the idea of using, exactly as Francis said, gravel products because they generally have wider ranges, yeah, it's a mint idea. Don't listen to the marketing. Go with the products that are going to work best for you. And GRX, as in terms of gear ratios, is a fantastic option. I have a GRX group set on a gravel, well, on my Super X, which is technically a cross bike, and I have it set up as a road bike. And it's the first time ever that I've used one bike properly on road, and I've actually really enjoyed it. I don't think I would want it on like a race bike.
I agree.
But on a bike that I use on the road for normal everyday riding, which is like 99.99% of the riding I do, one bike is actually really good. And gravel gear ratios where we live, which is incredibly hilly, it's just perfect.
It's quite good when you change gear and you press the button and it actually changes gear.
As opposed to not.
Well, there's actually a difference between the two gears.
Oh, I see what you mean, yeah. I actually think Emily needs to move to one bike, but that's a whole nother conversation.
Ooh.
Yeah, whatever, I'll do it. No, do you know what? I always felt like I needed to buy. And then I think having had my time off the bike, I am not as attuned with when I should be changing. And it's very sloppy now. And it never used to be. I always used to feel like I knew when to boo, boo, boo. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Whereas you
Come
get
back
it
faster.
you get it wrong with 2x, and it's just
Oh, is that the reason you were thinking about changing?
Yeah, I just feel like I'm faffing about a lot with my gears.
But I think a big difference is we now live in the Northeast. When you
That's true. Maybe that's made a difference.
You were programmed to 2x road when we lived somewhere that was predominantly flat, and you spend most of your time in the big ring because it's mostly flat. You hit a climb, you go into the little ring. Whereas where we now live, it's constantly shifting between going up and down, and therefore you're very regularly having to flick between your front rings. Therefore, if you've got a 1x, you just don't have to do that.
Yeah, and the problem is when you take your bikes to get serviced by Nick, my conspiracy is that he he sets up the front mech wrong so that you convert to 1x and he can sell you 1x, because he's had my bikes and since then Andy had one of yours, and then you shift to the little ring on the front and the train just drops off.
Oh, he's paid by a big 1x.
Exactly. He is paid by a big 1x, I think.
He is, yeah.
So, historically, the 1x options weren't as big of a range as the 2x, but now I guess SRAM are doing all their mad stuff with their like the eagle-sized mechs and all this.
But there's just so many options now, isn't there?
Yeah,
for 1x.
The mullet
you
thing.
know.
And then Shimano have now gone their little micro spline and everything. The range is there.
Mm-hmm.
It's whether it's efficient or not for some people, I guess. Like, it doesn't make that much difference, does it?
Oh, I like it though because
You went all ASMR then.
Oh, can you actually still hear it? Really, in your headphones?
I think you could.
should we do a whole ASMR episode one time?
One day.
Let's not do that. It's really weird, isn't it?
It's really weird, especially in this room where I can already hear my blood virus pumping through my veins.
I can feel it in my veins. It's very odd.
Oh, God.
Can we stop doing
My foot's gone numb
my
because of the
foot's gone numb.
vibrations.
So he wasn't actually, his question wasn't even about 1x. I just made it about 1x, sorry.
It wasn't a question. It was just a
Oh, yeah,
popular
it's a
opinion.
statement. So, in terms of GRX shifters, absolutely sick. I love the shape of them.
They're not all the same, though.
Big gear
The
ratios.
best ones are it's the DI2, like the latest ones.
Yeah, they're really good.
They're really good.
They're so good.
I was like, oh, they look exactly the same. And then you touch them and you're like,
Oh.
they're really, really, really good. Oh, my foot has gone numb, though.
Big gear ratios, always a winner. All for it. Weighs about the same as 105. Don't care.
I knew he'd say that.
Good option.
You already have the, like, precursor.
Yes.
I've always wanted to say, is that the right use of that word?
I think so.
Precursor orb.
Yeah.
You have Ultegra RX,
I believe
which
so.
is like, it's like rare. You should probably eBay that for £1 million.
Mm.
It's like Ultegra. Before GRX existed, there was an Ultegra rear mech, which was Ultegra RX, and it had like a clutch in and was designed for more off-roady use. I think that's what a lot of the cyclocross racers slap that on their bikes. Very
That's
good.
probably what it would have been made for, yeah.
Yeah, I think Tony used to use that.
A relic now.
A relic from forgotten times.
Yeah. I mean,
Precursor.
also works completely fine. Still. Next one. Demetris in Athens says, unpopular opinion, marketing departments of cycling brands should be forced by law to post research which backs up their claims and held liable for vague or false claims.
As much as I agree with the sentiment of this, the reality is there's no standardized testing. They all produce material based on what they're trying to achieve. It's like, when tobacco companies were funding research on smoking not being dangerous, they're ultimately botching the information in a way that allows them to get the marketing message they want. I think what we actually need to do is just start ignoring the bullshit that they try and feed us and just buy the products that we want because we like them.
So what you're saying is you can fund science to prove anything you want to prove.
If you want to call it science, then yes.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Because this is it. Some brands do release their information. They call it white papers. And yeah, like the Colnago Y1RS, they had a white paper. I feel like SRAM and Zip, for most of the things they do, they also do it. But really, there's a lot of it. It's quite boring. I imagine as a layperson reading through all of that stuff, you might understand it or you might not understand it or you might interpret it differently. But yeah, you're right. Without actually setting out the testing methods, and you want to know whether it's an independent test, and also
Well, let me put it this way. If we were, as a business, the scale of GCN, for example, I would absolutely encourage us to make a video, which is we made the fastest bike in the world, and actually design a bike and get it tested so it comes out as being the fastest one in the world, but actually it's just a load of junk. That'd be a really fun experiment.
What, to prove that you can just skew the
yeah, totally. Unfortunately, we don't have the resources to be able to produce a video like that, but that would be great fun.
It always goes through my brain that I'd like to do a video where we independently test, or like get a professional to independently test loads of things, like
Cycling News do loads of that.
Or Cycling Plus did the wheels.
Cycling News do a lot of things now. They did wheels. They've done kit recently as well, I think.
So the wheels one was really good. And they tested loads of the top end wheels, all at kind of similar depths. But again, the result is just boring. Because it's 4 watts. It's all within they're so close.
But this is what we found from some of our testing as well, is that all of this stuff is so marginal that it is irrelevant to literally anyone. Even the pros don't care. They just ride what they're given.
But absolutely true. But because you can measure it, people obsess about it.
Yeah.
It's like bike weight. People obsess about it because you can measure it. It's like one of the few things you can measure. And at least with like some testing, there's a number. And then people get excited about the number.
So you're saying it's an unpopular opinion because you should just maybe not hold the information as tight to start with.
Yeah, that's what I think.
Do you have an unpopular opinion? Please send them in to wildonespodcast@cademedia.co.uk and you might feature on a future episode.
And don't forget, you can also send your questions and comments for Listeners Takeover, like this one from Stephen in Utah, who says, I've been a pretty die-hard cyclist for about 3 years now and found the sport after losing nearly 60 pounds from running and dieting. I struggled with emotional binge eating prior to the weight loss, and after losing my brother suddenly, I turned my focus to exercise as an almost meditative response. The weight loss was awesome and the high I felt was incredible, but I started to track my food and only allowed myself those earned calories each day. This led me to ride 45 to 60 miles every day with no rest days for months on end. Somehow my body managed and I became a wicked strong cyclist, but cycling went from one of my favourite hobbies to something very compulsive and dark. I had buddies cheering me on as I took the comms on climbs and sprints, but instead of feeling a sense of accomplishment, I felt very depressed and obsessive about it all. Cycling has a very sneaky culture woven into it about being as light and as thin as possible, and it got a hold on me fast. I'd look in the mirror weighing 150 pounds and still feel like I had more to lose to increase my watts per kilo. I decided to take a little rest last season, but I missed the training and racing I was doing. I'm actively working with a therapist on my eating and emotions, but do you have any recommendations for disconnecting the food from sport while still properly fueling and eating enough? I don't look at calories burnt anymore on rides, and I try to listen to my body's needs and cravings. I will say that Mr. D Motivator helped me slow my roll last season as I listened to the podcast while riding. I really tried to only go riding when I wanted to rather than when my OCD was telling me to. Thanks for all you do, guys, and keep up the great work. Well, Stephen, it sounds like you've been going through a bit of a rough time. Thank you for sharing. Sorry about your brother. And I would like to start by saying we are not professionals, and I think that you are doing the right thing by working with a professional. So well done for getting help, and definitely continue to do that. Eating disorders are mental health conditions, and it's often about using the control of food to cope with feelings or other situations. It's often far more complex than simply wanting to be thinner. So that's why it is really important to get help. Generally speaking, I think exercise can be a really, I don't want to say good, but let's say good in inverted commas, mask for eating disorders, especially because you often get praise for your appearance, performance, achievements. So it kind of then reaffirms what you're doing. I think that can be quite destructive.
That idea of like, oh, you look like a marathon runner, or oh, you look like you could be a professional cyclist.
I have definitely heard that in the past. I have had my own struggles with disordered eating, and I have been given that feedback in the past. Mine was linked very much to running, and I find that I'm okay now because it's been quite a while. It's probably been best part of 10 years now, but there was a long time I couldn't run because I fell back into that pattern of analysing data and linking that to food really intrinsically, and it's about trying to break those patterns. I know that when you're coming out of that other side of that, pairing exercise with recovery is really difficult, and so I would definitely say consult your therapist about that as well, because sometimes it can trigger, I don't know, falling back into bad patterns.
Something you can do with riding bikes is eating real food. And by that, I mean, take a sandwich on a bike ride, take actual, like the food that you would have for lunch or for breakfast, take it with you on a bike ride instead of sweets, instead of gels, instead of sugar drinks. And a couple of reasons. One, it's really inefficient to eat a sandwich whilst you're riding a bike. So the chances are you're going to stop and it's going to feel like a meal rather than something about performance or about going really fast. Plus, it keeps a relationship with food as it being food rather than it being performance.
Correct. Yeah. The question that he asked us is recommendations for disconnecting food while still fueling properly and eating enough. I think almost the concept of fueling your activity or optimizing your fueling just maybe isn't the best frame of mind to be in terms of, because he did also mention that he really liked our episode with pro nutritionist Will. And while it's really interesting to think about what the pros are doing and how they optimize every little bit, also in reality, you don't need to do that. You don't need to overanalyze. I think it really can get you into the mindset of really overanalyzing your food and really counting every little thing and working out whether, it's fuel in, fuel out. I think you almost need to forget that idea and eat.
Well, the pros are being paid to do that. And, well, they're not even the ones having to do it because Will is doing it for them.
Well, I think that makes a massive difference. And I remember thinking about this in terms of, that happens in like Hollywood with actors and stuff like that. A lot of them will have nutritionists and have chefs. And a lot of them will be on calorie restricted diets because usually it'll help them get more work if they look very young and beautiful and all that kind of stuff. It can contribute to getting more roles, more jobs, whatever. So if they were managing all of that themselves, you can see how that would get more obsessive. Whereas when you give that over to someone else and someone just says, eat this now, eat this now, eat this now, goodbye, it's a lot more freeing, isn't it? But we as normal people don't have that.
I would love to be rich enough to not have to think about food.
Yeah, totally.
Wow.
Personal chef.
So
Imagine.
Good. So
I wouldn't
good.
just eat the same thing every single day.
That's the hardest thing about mental health issues as regards to eating, because you can't go cold turkey. You have to continue to. It's not like you have binging problems with alcohol or whatever, and you can work with people to just cut it out altogether. You have to continue to eat all the time, and that's the.
Am I going to get eaten?
I thought she was snoring. There's Bella underneath the chair.
Fine, yeah, she's just asleep and she's barking. Yeah, I think that's the hard thing. So take real food as a really good thing, but also if you eat too little, you're going to have a crap time. If you eat a bit too much, nothing bad is going to happen other than you might feel bad about that. And I would definitely say if thoughts about eating too much are making you feel uncomfortable, you should also be relaying that to your therapist. So work on eating real food, eating enough, and keeping a log of how it makes you feel and discuss it with your therapist.
Oh, a good one as well is having more hobbies. So we see this quite a lot with some of our friends, is everything about them is cycling. And it's very easy to argue, in my opinion, that actually isn't very healthy. And actually having some other things that you have an interest in, whether it be going to the cinema, whether it be hiking, it can still be sport. If you're a really sporty person, like also do running, also play some football, also play some cricket, also play netball, also play whatever, so that it's moving away from having this hyper obsession over one thing, which can then encourage you to want more performance, buy more performance, focus on all the little things. Just think about health rather than fitness. And health is making sure you're resting, making sure you're eating as well as you can, and being active.
It's so true. Most of the guys who I used to race with who really made it and are still professional cyclists now and have just gone through the ranks slowly, maybe not always slowly, but some of them go through ranks slowly, have always had a thing on the side which was either university, like they were studying university, or they had a coaching business on the side, something to focus on that's not literally riding your bike. So when they've had big setbacks, and this isn't, aside from the eating thing, they've had crashes and one of the guys broke his leg, right? That's a whole season gone, basically. But he had work and coaching and studying and all these things to fall back on and to focus on. And that's so beneficial. And it's those guys. There's definitely like a correlation between longevity of cycling career and not just my whole life is bikes.
Diversify your portfolio.
Whoa.
In financial
Emily's
terms.
like hardcore stock market.
I've just listened to Jimmy too much.
Yeah.
But that's it. If one thing goes under, you've got your other things to float off.
I don't think I've
metaphor for
ever
life.
said that to you, ever.
Buy low, sell high.
That's the one you say to me.
I always say that too.
To the moon.
Yeah, I hope that helps.
So I guess that's all for this week. Thank you very much for listening. Make sure you subscribe so you do not miss out on the next episode.
Oh, and there might not be an episode going out next week or the week after. TBC.
Well, I'm not here, but we will try.
Yes. Okay. So what's going to happen is we're going to try and record a remote episode, our first remote episode. And if you're hearing this version of the outro, it means it hasn't worked. Wait, we won't know. How do we know?
I don't know. This is like it's like multiple timelines. This is like what Marvel are dealing with.
I feel like you have to use this outro regardless.
Multiverse.
Okay, so if you don't hear an episode next week, it's because our test hasn't worked. And if you do, then just disregard this message, I guess.
With the message of you might not get an episode next week.
Yeah.
Well, it's still relevant.
So regard it.
It's relevant whether there is one if there isn't.
Okay, fine. But if there isn't an episode next week or the week after, we will definitely be back on the 5th of July because that is the start of our Tour de France Daily Pro Show. Om fam.
Wild Ones Pro Show.
Yeah. So, but I would like us to, I think the sensible approach is to continue to do episodes up until then because it keeps the momentum going rather than people going off on a 2-week holiday, forgetting about us. Yeah, we don't want that. So we will try our best. We will endeavour to make episodes over the next fortnight from a remote, undisclosed location for Francis.
Area 52.
Airy 52. Is that your geezer name? Harry 52.
If I'm talking weird, it's because my sinuses are still blocked, Jimmy. I can't hear my own voice at all.
You are, governor. I'm Airy 52.
Hairy.
Okay, thank you and bye.
Bye.